Hello and welcome. My name is Tim Zavislak of Golden Point Growth, an Amazon advisor and proud member of RTM. Today, we're going to talk about enterprise brands and how they spent the last decade or so investing in personalizations, CDPs, recommendation engines, dynamic content tools, audience segmentation, and all kinds of stuff. McKinsey says that faster growing companies are, driving more than 40% of the revenue from personalization. But the paradox is lots of CMOs can't really point to any incrementality in terms of revenue from it. And, we all sort of shake our heads and go, well, why is that? The hard truth is that I think that most personalization running on enterprise sites today is a lot of it's theater. You have a lot of hero banner swaps and generic recommended for you carousels and email subject lines that use your first name. Frankly, I don't know who cares anymore at this point. But the brands that are actually moving conversion rate, AOV and LTV with personalization are doing something fundamentally different. And today we're going to unpack what's working, what's wasting budget, and where perhaps you should put your next personalization dollar so it shows up in actual measurable revenue, especially if it's incremental revenue, which we all want to do. I have the pleasure of being joined today by Rebecca Kerper. She has spent 25 years at QVC Group working in the US and Europe. Most recently, she was chief digital officer at one of their business units, HSN, of course. And prior to that, she spent time at a few digital startups back when e-commerce, when the world was young. And we were all, I think, in this since then. And lots have changed. And I look forward to unpacking some of that with her today. And she's now working as an executive leadership coach, leveraging her own corporate experience to help leaders stay ahead of the rapid pace of change. And I'm also joined by John Murdock, who is the CEO of Fastr, as a leading conversion rate optimization, A/B experimentation, and personalization platform. Fastr works with customers such as New Balance, Carhartt, Kendra Scott, and hundreds more large omni brands and retailers globally. Awesome organization. Prior to that, John spent 25 years supporting and working with retailers, brands, and pretty heavy-duty complex enterprise systems, helping them scale. So, Rebecca, welcome. I wonder if we might start off with you. Maybe tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're seeing out there and out in the marketplace.
Yeah, thank you. Hi. You did a really good job of covering my experience. Like Tim said, I spent 25 years at the QVC Group. I had many different roles there, ranging from e-commerce, being involved in it from the beginning. I moved over to broadcasting. I led organizations in marketing and content and creative, and am just really thrilled with sort of my current full-time experience leading Leadership Growth Group, which is a executive coaching and leadership consultation firm in Tampa, Florida. And a lot of what I'm seeing now with as I'm coaching leaders, as I'm coaching organizations, it has everything to do with what we're talking about with personalization. It's about the technology, it's about the implementation, and it's about the operating model that sort of sits under that, because a lot of people are really excited about AI, personalization, customization, and you can plug in a lot of tools. What I love focusing on with my coaching and consulting is ensuring that the foundation is set, that we're making really good agreements in the beginning so that we can be really clear on what is incremental revenue, how do we measure success, and I think really importantly, how do we get from these are the insights that the personalization engine is telling us, and then, okay, how long did it take for us to implement them versus just saying, we've got a lot of data here. And I know that data will be a big part of our conversation. So thank you for having me. Nice to see.
Of course. And I thought if we could start with you and then we'll pivot to John.
Yeah, sure.
Why do you think most enterprise personalization investments, struggle to produce measurable lift? And, what are some structural reasons why you think it's actually happening today?
Yeah. Thank you, because that's just what I was kind of touching on in the intro is, a lot of times when things work or don't work, it's like, okay, well, there was something happened with the integration. The technology isn't right. And when you think about the operating model of how an organization is set up, it's also a lot about how are we learning in real time, and how are we taking the insights that we're getting and and acting on them. And I think that a lot of times ahead of some type of tech integration or implementation, we do a really good job of working with engineering and making sure that the tech is sound and that it is integrating into our own systems in the right ways. But there's so much with that operating model, such as if if the tool tells us something and we have to get X number of levels of approval in order to act on it, or if we test something and it doesn't work out, do we stop or do we keep going? So there is some bravery that's required with a lot of these sort of
It's a
customized
great word, by the way.
tools that
That's
we're
an awesome word for
implementing,
that.
because
Yeah.
it's different than, before it was, before personalization was like, well, let's have two different homepages. And it's like, okay, there's bravery in that. But now it's like, well, no, let's constantly have different content being served out. Let's test and learn and react. And, you know, a lot of us who have been in retail for 25 plus years, it was just a lot slower. And it doesn't mean that we were slow as humans. I mean, we were moving really fast for all different reasons. The business changes were slower, and we could anticipate and we could read and we could react. So I do think that adopting sort of that agile, and I don't mean just like agile methodology, I
Yeah,
mean
right.
flexible,
Yes.
adapting
Yes.
flexible mindset is really, really important as we commit to some of these changes, both big and small.
Yes. And John, maybe on that, and maybe take a moment to tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about Fastr and what you're seeing out there, and your thoughts on all this.
Yeah, and so and I love that too, Rebecca. So I guess a little more on Faster is as you mentioned in the intro, we work with many global brands and retailers that are working across different channels, both online, in store, distribution, wholesale, et cetera, across multiple markets, so international markets, et cetera. And as you mentioned in the intro, we focus on, our platform brings A/B experimentation, personalization, and conversion rate optimization to the table for these complex businesses. So when we tend to get engaged, it's typically it's typically we walk in and we see a lot of the same kind of themes that exist and probably exist for many of our attendees today on the call, is that everyone has a personalization budget. Almost none of them can really measure what was earned with confidence on attribution. And, at the end of the day, that's not really a data problem. It is a proof problem. It's an organization problem. And I think, Rebecca, to your point, just around speed, it's really just an execution problem. So, personalization, didn't fail. I love this topic and I love the tee up here. Really kind of the underlying organization structure has been failing. The rule writing has failed. The strategy was probably right. It's, by and large, typically is right. It's really comes down to kind of an execution model that was built around humans and tools and, a collection of technologies. And that just never scaled. And now AI is here opening up tremendous opportunities for brands and retailers. But to layer that on top of kind of poor execution, is really where I think things fail. So I think the winners in today's era are really not better at data. They're really kind of faster at execution, like you said, Rebecca.
Yes.
And sometimes it's not even, that the execution is poor. It's like it's just dated. Like the execution for this, it's poor today because it was built for something that was trending yesterday, or like a system that was really in place yesterday. And so being a couple steps ahead of that and that flexibility, I think, is hard and important.
Yeah, and staying, a little bit sort of in that direction, Rebecca. What are some what I would call personalization theater that you're still seeing out there today? And people are probably really not getting a whole lot of value out of it. Conversely, what are you seeing that is working that actually really is moving the incremental needle for some brands?
Yeah, I told John and Tim this story in our prep call, but I had a personal example that came across. There's this pizza place right down the street from us. So we're there all the time, obviously. And And I got a text because, I'm on the list. I got a text that said, brand new, amazing offer, 2-liter Diet Coke or Diet Cola. Sorry. And, not sponsored by Diet Coke. And, it made me laugh because as one who's integrated or ingrained in the business, like I could assume that what happened was when a new offering comes out, send out a text to the people who have ordered. Because like if it's a new, I don't know, like a spicy calzone that's, something that's exciting, yes, you want to blast that out to everybody. But anyway, a 2-liter Diet Coke, if you set these generic rules, then you're going to get generic things back. So that to me was an example of where personalization can go wrong. And I think that there's a couple reasons why we're sort of still in this theater zone. And one is because you can see it. If you have people who are making decisions and looking to justify the spend and the cost that goes into some of this tech, you want to be able to see what's happening, whether that's, like I said earlier, different versions of the homepage or things like that. And I also think it's because it's familiar and people repeat what they know because we've been putting recommendation carousels on websites forever. And so, in my previous role, like one can think, in my previous role, this was really successful for me. So I'm going to repeat what I know. And, there's companies like Fastr and there's all these new opportunities to say, just because that worked in the past, yes, it's probably still relevant. And there's an and there. And what more can we do on top of that? So I think that where things are really working is when we let go of a little bit of control, which, is hard for me to say that. But when we
Well, it's
really,
bravery. It's back to your own word,
yeah,
right?
it's brave, but
It
as
just is. It kind of is.
yes, I just mean as like a ENTJ on the Myers-Briggs, if you're into that. I love to keep things under control, but there is a way to do both things at the same time. Meaning, I think that to your question of what's working, I think that there's a lot of specific examples that we could use. I think about it a little bit more generally, which is when you say, okay, what do I want to control? I want to control higher conversion as an example. Well, how can I do that? I can know where I can let go of control, let things run on its own, test, learn quickly, and truly create personalized experience that's not burning through everyone on my text on my list to tell them that we have Diet Coke now.
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. For sure. John, what are you seeing that's like, some of the awesome brands you work with? What are you seeing that's really moving the needle?
Yeah, well, first, I mean, I would totally agree that I think, this personalization theater, it's everywhere. I mean, it's whether it's a hero banner or it's the carousel swap, and underneath the surface is basically just kind of stale methods and stale, approaches or siloed data. So you have all of these segments and nobody has touched them, or you just don't have the resources to really, to really manage through it. And so it just becomes generic at the end of the day. And so personalization isn't really personalization. And it doesn't really connect with the customer. And I think that is the purpose of personalization is yes, to drive conversion rates up and to go deeper with your customers and to increase the size of the cart and all of that. But really good personalization is really building a connection deeply with that customer. And you can't do that in generic segments or in, hero banner swaps and everything we discussed. But that budget does survive. So, companies still have budget deployed towards those, those approaches because it's easy to demo, it's visible, it's kind of known. And so Rebecca's, your point on being brave to kind of, push beyond, the basic, I think is really where the opportunity is to drive, deeper relationship with your customers and to go deeper. So what's working, I think, as we, start to engage with our customers is going deeper on that personalization down to the discovery path, down to not just the decoration on a banner, but, deep into the search and the category and the product pages, not just the banner. And, really starting to personalize based on behavior. across, in session across the site. And that's really where you're going to get, kind of deeper conversion and stickier relationships with your customers. Taking some signal that's happening in session, marrying that up with what you know about that customer, or at least what's available to you, collecting that first party data that's happening and just using that all in real time to really personalize that experience. Just like if you're walking into a retail store, walking over to an associate and having a conversation about product, you want your digital to have that same experience, and it can be done. Just requires being brave, like you mentioned, Rebecca.
Yeah, and I want to move that back to Rebecca too. That sort of that you mentioned, in store. I'm world's biggest omni-channel guy because at the end of the day, these investments in digital are huge, and if you can sort of amortize these legitimately over a brick and mortar business, everybody wins, and the whole business sort of moves, and you move the whole business forward. And Rebecca, I mean, we did a little bit of research on this. Awesome brands, Tapestry, Victoria's Secret, Ulta. These guys are ingesting all kinds of 1P, 0P loyalty program sort of data from brick and mortar, from a legacy digital thing. And then they're creating these really interesting AI conversations on the front end of a website. And look, I'm just curious your thoughts on that. And if you're seeing people actually get some incrementality out of that in your world.
Yeah, I think that it's, the whole first party, no party data has become really interesting from the perspective of what are you going to do with that data? Because I think that if we're asking a customer or a consumer to provide us with something, then we have to make sure that we're delivering something in return. And so I think that there's this set it, forget it mentality of like, I'm receiving this information, and because of that, it means that we now go and activate this plan. So I think that the companies that are winning have this real strategic view of, okay, when I'm just getting customer behavior data, this is what it means, this is what I'm doing with it. But then when I'm receiving first party data, this is what I'm then doing to activate it. Because I think that there is a level of trust that's required now with all data, and we have to make sure that we're really meeting the customers where they are, and that we're delivering what, not just even what we say that we're going to deliver, but what they expect from us as retailers. Um, and John, you touched on something that I was thinking about, behavior. This might it's related, but not only do we have to understand the behavior, we have to understand the anticipated behavior. So just because a customer is providing data or is experiencing something on the website that looks black and white, it's like, what's underneath that? What's their intention? And then how do we just be really not even just careful, but like deliberate with what our response is to that?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think there's a responsible use of data that needs to be considered here. And that's where it kind of feeds into the strategy. So no doubt you can collect a lot of data about your customers, your visitors, your site. You need to be thinking strategically about how to use that, and thoughtful about how you use that data for, to your point, for like anticipated behavior, for the intended outcome, which is to deepen that relationship with the customer, improve conversion rates, bring them back for more, right? We want to, continue to kind of reinforce that brand experience, go beyond just the transaction. So you have to responsibly use data. And that does require, thinking through strategy and making sure that you're not just checking the box in terms of kind of putting a technology in and deploying that, right? You want to use it responsibly.
On that, John, and I know you're in some really, really large buildings, with Fastr. I'm curious if you could just take a moment and just share, with us, and just sort of your thoughts on, you can stand up all the technology you want, and you can put all this stuff, and you can sell it in, and the organization can buy it. But at the end of the day, a lot of this sort of how you mechanize it in the marketplace is going to come down to organizational structure, organizational design, organizational behavior, and this and that. Because I'll tell you, I'm in one or two buildings too, and you see a lot of really bright, shiny AI objects, in boardrooms and in C-suites, and they all look great on a sheet of paper, but the execution comes down to, the opportunity really is in how the organization is mechanized to go do it. You're seeing unstructured, messy, what have you data, and you're making a current problem a new problem. And I'm just curious how, you sort of look at these personalization exercises because they touch everything: supply chain, planning, content, et cetera. How do you sort of coach people to that, and what are you seeing out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit it. So, the largest organizations are going to feel it the hardest, right? Multiple brands, multiple markets, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of different product lines and organization structures built around, driving results, across, their different organizational KPIs. The customer is interacting with the brand and the retailer, right? So they want an experience that kind of sits across those silos, that sits across that experience, if you will. And that is harder as brands and retailers grow and expand and get more complexity internally. And without good governance and without good organizational strategies and rules and cohesion across, your different brands and products and organizational charts, it's going to feel messy to the customer, and you're just going to amplify, a bad experience. So it does start at the top, really kind of setting out goals and objectives and strategies that can, that can be then implemented across, the different brands and products and markets more cohesively. But so it has to start at the top. And it can't start at the bottom with just deploying technology and hoping that, you get some good results for that one, silo of the organization.
Are you going into a building and I'm sort of I'm making this too sort of abbreviated, but are you saying you got to really throw out some of these old KPIs because they frankly don't matter anymore? Like, are you seeing that you're needing to do that and say, you know what, back to Rebecca's bravery thing, these KPIs that we were holding on to very, very dearly, they mattered for many, many years, but you know what, today, maybe not so much, and we got to make some new ones.
Yeah, I'd love Rebecca's, point of view on this too. So yes, I mean, I think I do think there's a time there is a place for, deep departmental, KPIs and goals and objectives, et cetera. Absolutely, that needs to be there, but it does have to start at the top and cascade down and connect through in a cohesive way, so that the customer's experience is not getting that, that email with a 2-liter bottle of Coke that, you mentioned, Rebecca, in their inbox because somebody was trying to push some particular objective. So I do think it does start at the top. You have to rethink your goals, objectives, and how are you going to tie this together? And that starts with strategy and then initiatives and et cetera that can then kind of flow down through. And that's the strongest organizations do a really amazing job of building that, that operational kind of cohesion, versus just the sum of the parts.
Rebecca, please, I love your thoughts on all this.
Yeah, I have so many thoughts because I know, right? I think that, John, you're hitting it so well about like the customer. And at the end of the day, what really matters is the experience that the customer is having. So what we as leaders need to do, and this is a really big part of my coaching work right now, is how do we identify the things that we're doing today that are a result of what worked before. So there's so many things that we default to, which is got to drive conversion. Of course, like those KPIs have to remain core. We have to drive conversion. We have to drive sessions. Yes. And, so like the foundation of sales is built off of that. But maybe there's other things on top of it, such as what is the time spent from when we get an insight from AI into when we implement it? And how are the leaders holding the teams accountable for that? And in addition, so that's like the foundational work, kind of what you're talking about, John, is like what starts at the top and that foundation that we're setting. I think another piece of it is adding on to what you were saying about governance and rules and making sure that that's really tight. I think that there's an additional layer of roles. So you can have all of the governance and have all of the rules, but if the team members are not clear on what their part is in the bigger omni-channel picture, that's where I think things get tripped up. So think again about this idea of traditional retail X number of years ago. And I think about the merchants. I dream of being a merchant one day. I just love being around merchants, their passion, their knowledge, their expertise. I just love everything about merchants. It used to be find the product, buy the product, get it to the store, get it to the brick and mortar store. Then it was buy the product, find the product, figure out how to allocate for in-store and web. Now there's more. Now there's TikTok shopping. Now we have to allocate inventory in other places. The buyers now need to not just know their product, they need to know the customer. They need to know what is most important so that they can serve up the search terms to the e-commerce team. It used to be, and as one who led e-commerce teams, it was the merchants could hand the stuff off to the e-com team. And because they are the product experts. Well, being a product expert today looks different because now it's understanding what the digital marketplace is looking like, understanding that the TikTok shop customer might have different expectations. It needs to be really demonstrable. And that's different from something that you can put on a shelf in brick and mortar. So the bow around what I'm trying to say is, John, I agree completely that what you're saying is talking about being really intentional with rules and governance. And I would add on top of that the layer of making sure that all team members at all levels really understand kind of where they fit into the omni-channel experience, and that we as leaders are staying really close to that as well, because sometimes our expertise and our experience can almost become like a blocker because we know something so well that it's like continuing to evolve. Stay on top of that. Talking with people about how they're shopping that are in their 20s. Like that's a really important part of the leadership experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think too, we're now in an era where we'll walk into a new customer that has had traditional, in-store retail and traditional, e-commerce online. And they in the past have been kind of competitors to one another, right? In many brands and
Yes.
retailers. Now we're seeing more and more of these channels start to kind of collaborate on strategy and that experience. And I think that's unlocking just a whole, host of opportunities now that you have your channels actually magnifying each other instead of competing with each other. That's the big unlock here. And the customer sits across these channels, to your point.
Right.
She may be on TikTok, she may be, on your digital site, she may be in store. She wants a kind of cohesive experience, right, across all of that. And if you can bring that and develop that and personalize that at scale, I think you go deeper with that relationship with the customer and they feel like you really know them. And that's the point of personalization.
Yes.
John, I'll stay with you if I could on this. So bringing this back again, staying a little bit with omnichannel. So many, pretty much every consumer goods category that I know of and that I've touched has become commoditized in some way. So in other words, go on Amazon, go on Walmart, any marketplace you like. If you need a stapler, you need a tape dispenser, you have the legacy brands that invented those, sure, but you also have brands with 12 consonants in a row you've never heard of. And so, John, I'm curious, you're kind of how you think of this, the personalization, and this is really the unlock to do that well. And then when the onslaught continues, tariffs, no tariffs, doesn't matter. They're not going anywhere, these challenger brands. How are you seeing like these awesome legacy brands that defined their categories use that to sort of like defend against that in the marketplace?
Yeah, I think we're all after that choice, right? The consumer has a choice with the dollars and, where are they going to spend their time and their money? And we want it to be with you as a brand. You want it to be with you as a retailer. And so I think the best brands and retailers right now are leaning in heavily to strategy and taste and their brand image and creative and using those as differentiators for that relationship. And what delivers that is an experience across all the channels, like we've talked about, personalization that actually matters and isn't just theater, like we've talked about, using your data kind of responsibly, like we've talked about. So I think those are the brands and retailers that are going to win the future, are going to push back, past being a commodity and just go deeper with their customer and build a deeper relationship. And that's where we thrive. That's where we're spending a lot of time with our customers. And I think that's there's a huge unlock. I mean, there's just so much potential when we walk in, to a building for what they can do in those categories.
Great. And Rebecca, I'm sure you have an opinion on this too.
Yeah, I'm totally aligned with what John's saying. And I would add to it that I heard somewhere the term "we're in a trust recession." There's so much information out there. There's so many brands. There's so many commoditized goods. There's so much stuff, whether that's content or product, etc. And so the brands and the companies that are going to win are not just the ones who are going to differentiate themselves or have a personalized experience. It's like taking that one step further of a personalized experience can help to strengthen that trust with the customer or with the consumer. And that's why, influencers are so strong right now, because they're looking into the camera and they're saying something that, okay, I've built a relationship with you. Brands are able to do that not just through their influencer, or their commission programs. They're able to create these experiences that when a customer is engaging with their site, with their app, on social media, things like that, that they feel seen, that they feel heard. It kind of goes back to what I had mentioned before around it's not just enough to understand what the customer is doing. It's like a layer underneath that. Why might she be doing that? Or they might be doing that. So you're searching for black dress. Yes, 100 things might come up, but are they going to a wedding? Are they, like what can I do to help to really zone in so that it doesn't feel like they're watching me? It feels like
Not creepy.
they get me and they get me. And that's a really hard
It's a fine line.
balance.
That
Fine
creepy,
line.
not creepy, that's a very fine line.
Yeah, but the ones that are doing it right are the
Yeah.
ones whose customers are extremely loyal to them. And they're
Right.
doing it in a way that's either subtle or clear, or they're asking for information or data that they can then connect the dots. So I think that it's that dot connecting done strategically that can build that trust, John, that you're really talking about with the experience.
Yeah, and there's a great comparison for this, and it's the real world. When you walk into a retail store and an associate engages you,
Yeah.
how do they interact with you? What are they asking? How are they guiding you through the store? If we bring that to the digital world, right, that's more authentic than being creepy, right? You could ask, what brings you in today? I'm here because I'm looking for a wedding dress.
Yeah.
Right. And then you can personalize that whole on-site experience around that, just like you would in store. So those are I think those are the things that humans would appreciate, but we don't want the creepy, the creepy oversight. Right. So, I would fund things that really kind of drive, that experience that looks and feels like an in-store experience. Where you're interacting with your customers in a way that feels human-like.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's where like all this nuance that we're all talking about, right? That comes down to the people stuff, and that comes down to the organizational stuff, because you can buy the finest SaaS, the finest platforms. I don't care what it is, but if you don't have folks in your building that really understand your product, your consumer, your retailer, the history of the brand, all that texture and all that nuance, it just goes up in smoke. And I think, we can have all this amazing technology, but if we don't have the right sort of people, orchestrating the instruments right, it all kind of falls flat. You get the Diet Coke thing, right? I think it just comes down to that. Cause look, at the end of the day, your pizza parlor, they threw money at some program for all the right reasons. They did all the right things, but there's like that last couple percentage points that they didn't really nail.
Yeah, and consumers' attention is finite, and also the trust that they give is finite. So when I get that text, I go, "Huh?" And I mean, I'm in the industry, so of course I screenshot it, put it on LinkedIn. I was like using it as case study. But for others, it might be like, wait a minute, I don't think that this pizza place or this brand understands me, or it might affect their credibility. And so there's so much value of a set it, forget it. Like, okay, turn the thing on and let it do its thing. If everyone is aligned from the start around what the anticipated outcomes are, what success looks like, back to your KPI question, because it's not just about incremental, and we could have a whole other conversation around
Oh,
what.
that's
Oh,
lots of cheat.
okay, that's the next webinar.
Yeah.
So really getting clarity, because to just default back to like, well, we're just trying to drive conversion rate. That doesn't necessarily, it might be incremental, but it might not be the clear driver of the ROI of these tools.
So, if we could, as we sort of, land the plane on our conversation today, Rebecca and John and I thank you very, very much for your time. It's just awesome rock'em sock'em conversation. Rebecca, we've all been in this business for a little bit, and probably longer we care to admit to, but we've all seen lots of vaporware, lots of stuff that just came and went and what have you. What do you think, and no one's got a crystal ball, but in the future, something that's never going to go away in our space, and something that, is probably going to be coming down the pike, relatively soon? I mean, what do you think?
I would go back to the brands and the leaders that I work with that are truly at their core successful are the ones who have the deepest connection with the customer. That goes back to trust. That goes, all of that. I think that to not just to understand them, but to respect them, and that the customer experience is at the core of their why. When you really think about, we were just talking about the omni-channel experience and the merchant, and what is your why? Why are you showing up to do this? Of course, it's to drive sales and to drive conversion and to get sessions and to get people in store and all of that. If you stay really grounded at the heart of that, it's to deliver a positive customer experience. It's to drive brand loyalty. I think that, I know it's not necessarily the technical answer to what will stay, because there's always going to be supply chain things. And, there's a lot that's core to the business that's not going to go away. I would love for everybody to really think about, what are your intentions for the customer? How do you stay grounded around this idea that we are in a trust recession, and look ahead to think about how can you elevate your leadership and your organization to really rally around that and use that as the baseline for any decision that you make, whether it's something that's new that's being implemented, or what John will clearly very nicely articulate of what are some of the things that will sort of stay as standard. It's that and balance that with the customer experience.
Thank you. John, what do you think? What do you, landing the plane with that? What do you think?
I completely agree, and I'm glad that this conversation has led to a conclusion that it's really about the customer and that deep kind of customer experience. And I think maybe your question is, how will things evolve? And I think we'll continue, hopefully, to see organizations evolve towards org structures that are built at the top, where the customer experience and the customer and the brand help really kind of drive, everything in the organization, and inform and help, the strategy across, the organizations in a better way versus, silos and products and transactional. Because I think to fight back against the commoditization that you mentioned, Tim, you really need to win that battle, and for the customer and for that customer relationship. And so I think I'm glad we're, having the conversation about how we get there. I think organization structure is part of that. And then I think also just choices on, what to do and not do around your technology and where to adopt AI and not, are certainly part of that too.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you. John, please let us know how we can connect with you personally, and then also with Fastr, if you would.
So yes, would love to connect. If you want to learn more, we can be found at getfastr.com. And I'm sure there'll be a little URL popped into the chat or online. And we're offering a 30-day proof of concept. So to anyone who's kind of watched this today, please feel free to reach out. We would love to kind of show you what we can do and what really can be done and unlocked with the right approach around personalization and its connection to your customer experience and conversion rate optimization. And so we'll look forward to hearing from folks. Feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, or you can find us through the website as well.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. Seriously, John is an awesome dude, very, very dear friend, and their organization is really, really changing some great outcomes in some pretty interesting buildings that they're working in. I highly encourage you guys, reach out to them, see maybe if you can help you with that as well. John, thank you, Rebecca. As always, a pleasure. Thank you all very, very much. And, look forward to seeing you again.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.